This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
في اليمن أكدت مصادر عسكرية أنه تم إلقاء القبض على 17 من خلايا.
According to Yemeni military sources, 17 Houthi rebels were arrested in Sa'da and 15 others were killed in Razeh in the Sa'da province. The rebels attacked security posts and government buildings. Meanwhile, Houthi rebels expressed their willingness to establish humanitarian passages that will be used to rescue refugees. Additionally, government spokesman Hassan al-Lawzi denied news reports stating that the Iranian hospital in Sana'a has been closed. Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh said that the army will prevail over the Houthis within a short time. In his speech, which he gave in a ceremony held to commemorate the October 14th revolution, he said that the army is achieving great victories, but that these victories are not usually publicly announced. He said that the Houthis are a perverse group that want to prevent progress in Yemen.
I promise you, my sisters and brothers, that victory is coming in a few days. Your courageous forces are achieving great victories, though we have not announced them. They achieve new victories day and night. The backward Houthi group refuses to do what is right. They continue to rebel and attack government locations, police, and security. What do they want? They say they're defending themselves and that the war was imposed upon them. To the contrary, they imposed the war upon the nation.
Joining
us from Sa'da, Captain Ahmed Za'al, a military commander in Sa'da province. Can you tell us about the security situation there so we can understand why the Yemeni president believes victory is imminent?
Thank you very much. Yes, we thank God because our armed forces are strengthening their control in the areas of Sa'da, Sufyan and Al-Marahid. We have enforced complete control over them, and we also have complete control over the roads they use, such as the ones leading to Marahid and Manfaz Am, as well as the road between Sana'a and Sufyan. The speech given by His Excellency, the President of the Republic, was clearly understood by the armed forces, security forces, and most of the Yemeni people. We must continue to confine this vicious virus that threatens to harm the people of Sa'da in particular, and then to spread throughout Yemen. However, this war is not like previous ones, as we are using special tactics to go after the Houthis and their hideouts both inside the city and other nearby areas. The armed forces continue to carry out military operations against Houthis in other areas.
Turkey and Syria have agreed to conduct wide-scale military maneuvers together. This news comes a day after Ankara canceled a scheduled joint military maneuver with Israel. Turkish and Syrian officials held two ministerial meetings in the Syrian city of Halab and the Turkish city of Gaziantep. The two nations agreed to boost their military and strategic cooperation. Meanwhile, Turkish and Syrian officials signed an agreement today to remove visa travel restrictions between the two countries.
Today was filled with symbolic gestures between Turkey and Syria. A number of Turkish and Syrian ministers gathered today at the Syrian side of the border to celebrate the symbolic removal of border barriers, which have separated the two countries for nearly a century. On the Turkish side of the border, they celebrated the signing of an agreement to lift visa travel restrictions. This will help ease travel restrictions, which were imposed on the two nations after the collapse of the Ottoman Caliphate.
100 years ago, there were no borders drawn between the countries in the region. All territories in the region were unified. Syria is our gateway to the Arab world and the Middle East.
The Turkish and Syrian officials held their first ministerial meeting in the Syrian industrial city of Halab. The meeting comes in the context of the strategic cooperation agreement signed last month between the two nations. 11 Turkish ministers and 11 Syrian ministers, including the foreign ministers and the ministers of the Interior and Defense, gathered in Halab to boost cooperation between their countries. The ministers agreed to boost cooperation at the various fronts, including political, economic, military, and the security fronts.
The military leaders from both countries will hold periodic meetings on both sides of the border. They will exchange information and share knowledge and expertise. The two countries agreed to open a direct line to report any attempts of infiltration across the Turkish-Syrian border. Both sides have been urged to report and counter any security breaches along the border.
The Turkish and Syrian ministers held another meeting in the Turkish city of Gaziantep. They finalized some of the agreements signed between the two nations. They agreed to launch projects to ensure the practical implementation of what has been agreed upon. Among the issues discussed are establishing free trade and transportation agreements and finding better ways to utilize water resources. In addition to removing landmines on the Turkish side of the border and banning the exploitation of energy resources, they have also agreed to expand the famous Adana Security Cooperation Agreement. The Syrian-Turkish relations have matured from a phase of mere political announcements to a phase of building actual joint cooperation institutions at various fronts, including security, political, and economic fronts.
Meanwhile, Syria says it is going to hold military exercise with Turkey. This shortly after Turkey canceled a joint drill with Israel. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim has praised Turkey's decision to exclude Israel from the Anatolian Eagle drill. He made the comment during a high-level meeting of Turkish and Syrian ministers. Muallim said the decision shows Turkey's approach toward Israel and reflects the way it regards the Israeli offensive against Gaza. Turkey called off its 6th annual international air maneuver after the U.S. said it would not take part if Israel was excluded.
Majority Muslim Turkey has delayed NATO-led military exercises because Israel was to be included, say Israeli sources. The 11-day air exercise was to have started this week, but has been postponed. Israeli media has been reporting the reason behind the delay is Turkey's rejection to Israel's participation. The Turkish Foreign Ministry has responded with a written statement. The exercise is continuing as a national event. Therefore, it's not correct to impose political meanings to Turkey's decision to cancel the international part of the multinational Anatolian Eagle air defence exercise. However, some say that the postponement of the third leg of the NATO-led drill is a clear sign that relations between Turkey and Israel are changing. Ties have been strained since Tel Aviv's war on Gaza, in which around 1,400 people died, mostly women and children. In a display of discontent, the Turkish Prime Minister stormed off stage after confronting the Israeli president during the World Economic Forum in Davos.
When it comes to killing, you know how to kill. I know exactly how you murdered and slaughtered those children on the beaches.
The Israeli intervention in Gaza turned everything around, and the relationship has become very uneasy, as most recently demonstrated by these sort of military exercises of the air forces in which Israel was to take part. They have been downgraded to a national activity.
It's not the first time there's been a standoff between Turkey and Israel since AK Party came to power. In 2007, Tel Aviv violated Turkish and Syrian airspace, a violation that was discovered by a Turkish farmer. Israeli fighter jet fuel tanks were dumped on the Turkish side of the Syrian border. Tel Aviv had reportedly ordered a flyover Syria to gather intelligence on installations near the Turkish border. The timing may have also played a role in the government overriding the military's planned exercise. On Tuesday, Turkey and Syria opened a second border crossing. Both foreign ministers walked across the new frontier together. Israel's open rejection of the so-called Middle East peace plan is clearly testing Turkish relations. Jody Sobral, Press TV, Istanbul.
Turkish Air Force official said today that Israel's delay in delivering Harran drone surveillance aircraft to Ankara spurred the cancellation of this week's NATO Air Force exercise. The official also told a local newspaper that Israel's conduct in Gaza during Operation Cast Lead had no impact on the decision. Earlier this week, however, the Turkish foreign minister stated that Operation Cast Lead was the reason for canceling the slated joint military exercise. And meanwhile, the United States has criticized Turkey for refusing IDF participation in the military drill. According to a spokesman at the State Department, the cancellation of Israel's participation at the last moment was inappropriate. And in related news, a Syrian spokesman last night announced that Damascus and Ankara are set to conduct their own joint military exercises. Defense Minister Ehud Barak went on the offensive against the Goldstone report today, telling key world diplomats that the report is false, distorted, and promotes terror. Barak spoke by telephone to the foreign ministers of France, Britain, Spain, and Norway, among others, driving home the message that adopting the report would provide an advantage to international terrorists. Barak's PR campaign comes ahead of the UN Human Rights Council debate over the Goldstone report, scheduled for tomorrow. According to reports, the UN committee will also discuss the final status of Jerusalem and recent violence on the Temple Mount. A combination of Israeli, U.S., and other democracies will prevent the Goldstone report from harming Israel in the United Nations. That's the view expressed today to IBA's Steve Leibowitz by Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon.
The fallout is not just for Israel to deal with, but for all decent countries, all democracies, because what we have seen from this very biased and unprofessional report, I must add, is that it really strips away the right for self-defense from democracies and giving it to terrorists who commit two violences. First, when they target civilians, and mostly civilians, and then they hide behind civilians and use them as human shields.
So you expect that it will be stopped at some point by those good countries?
Well, this is the idea, and you see who are the ones supporting it is only the Palestinians and some non-aligned or Muslim or Arab countries which have nothing to do with the human rights, on the contrary. Also the way that the Palestinians handled and treated this Council of Human Rights, I think it's a shame, where they can do whatever they want in this body, which makes it really a, I would say, an organ which is controlled by the Palestinians. One day they say we don't want to deal with it now, the other day they say this we do, and they have the majority there, unfortunately, and I think it undermines the very essence of the need for this Human Council in Geneva, and it really undermines its credibility.
Israeli envoy to the UN, Gabriela Shalev, threatened to refrain from resuming peaceful negotiations with Palestinians if they insist on submitting the Goldstone report to the UN Human Rights Council to be voted on.
This evening, the UN Security Council is supposed to discuss the situation in the Middle East as well as the Goldstone report. The Palestinian Authority said it has managed to rally support for discussing the report at the Human Rights Council in Geneva over the next few days.
عاد تقرير جولدستون بخصوص الحرب على غزة ليتصدر واجهة الأحداث.
The Goldstone report on the war on Gaza once again took center stage at regional and international levels. The UN Security Council agreed to discuss the report this evening in a general discussion about the situation in the Middle East. This comes after the Security Council rejoiced over the Libyan request last week to hold an emergency session to discuss the Goldstone report. In an attempt to give the Goldstone report more consideration, the Palestinian Authority demanded that the Human Rights Council in Geneva hold an emergency meeting in the coming 2 days to discuss the report and vote on it. This comes after the Palestinian Authority was strongly criticized during the past few days for originally withdrawing the report from the Human Rights Council, thus preventing discussion on the report. Now the Palestinian Authority says it has managed to secure the support of 18 country members at the UN Human Rights Council, including the 6 Arab countries that are members of the Council, in addition to other friendly countries such as China, Pakistan, and Senegal.
من الدول الصديقة كالصين والباكستان والسنغال.
A draft resolution pertaining to the Goldstone report was submitted to the Human Rights Council, which, if passed, will provide a foundation to pursue Israel legally in the International Criminal Court for the war crimes it committed against Gaza. For this draft resolution to pass, at least 24 out of the 47 country members of the Human Rights Council must vote for it. However, even if the report is submitted to the UN Security Council, it may still fail to implement the Goldstone report's recommendations to have the accused Israeli officials stand trial at the International Criminal Court. Israel absolutely rejects the report, as well as the American opposition. Additionally, some European countries expressed reservations about the report, which may explain why Arab sources believe the report is likely to be submitted to the UN General Assembly. Even if the General Assembly makes a serious decision about the Goldstone report, it still can't force the concerned parties to enforce the recommendations. Therefore, Israel may, as it usually does, escape any resolution mandated by the UN.
Joining me from New York, our correspondent Khaled Daoud. Khaled, what is happening behind the scenes at the Security Council?
They're waiting to see what will happen after the UN Human Rights Council completes discussion on the Goldstone report. The Council will meet tomorrow to talk about the Palestinian Authority's request to discuss the Goldstone report, and will also vote on the report and submit recommendations to the UN. Of course, as you mentioned, Libya requested last week that the UN Security Council hold an emergency session to discuss the Goldstone report, but the U.S. refused this request. However, the Security Council agreed to hold the monthly session about the Middle East earlier so that the Arab countries would have an opportunity to say what they wanted about the Goldstone report. The U.S. and other Western countries insist that this session, to be held a few hours from now at the Security Council, was designated to discuss the situation in the Middle East, not the Goldstone report. This comes at a time when the U.S. and its allies at the Human Rights Council are exerting serious efforts to prevent the Goldstone report from being submitted to the UN Security Council. According to diplomatic sources, the Human Rights Council is being pressured in Geneva to pass an ambiguous resolution as to whether the Council wants the report to be submitted to the Security Council. The UN Security Council General Ban Ki-moon told Arab diplomats that he does not welcome a resolution that would recommend submitting the Goldstone report to the UN Security Council. Therefore, the report may end up being submitted to the UN General Assembly instead. The General Assembly may pass a resolution requesting that the UN Security Council discuss the report, but their resolution will not be binding. The future of the Goldstone report is still undecided because of the extreme efforts to prevent it from being submitted to the Security Council.
The UN's bureau in the Gaza Strip expressed concern over the situation of school children in the Strip as winter approaches. School buildings throughout Gaza were damaged in the most recent Israeli war. BBC's Hunger to Learn series sheds light on these problems.
A new school year in the Gaza Strip. The streets are crowded with school children as usual. Huda, 9 years old, is on her way to school. The school belongs to the United Nations in Gaza and was shelled by Israel last winter. The shelling was so heavy, an eyewitness said that it was as if the sky was raining fire. Israel dropped white phosphorus bombs allegedly to protect its soldiers from gunfire of armed Palestinians. But the school was a refuge for many Palestinian families. Women and children were killed, and a number of classrooms were destroyed. This room has been restored to normal, but the memory of the children still remains.
We saw everything burned. The window glass was shattered. All the wooden desks were burned.
Military operations have ended, but Israeli sanctions continue to be enforced against the Hamas government, which is in charge of Gaza. The siege makes reconstruction very difficult.
What's the time? What's the time? Number 2.
The teachers say that these children suffer from behavioral problems and lack of concentration. Like other students, Houthis suffers from a sleep disorder. Israel expressed regret over the civilian suffering caused by its war on the Gaza Strip late last year, but it said it would continue to protect its civilians from Palestinian missiles. Conflicts may occur again, as the problem has not yet been solved.
Under usual circumstances, rain falls and makes its way to reservoirs, which are used by local power plants to generate electricity. However, in Mauritania's case, the process is reversed. Here, autumn rains are being blamed for the catastrophes that have swept the country. Much of the rain during the recent storms didn't find its way to the reservoirs, but rather to the local power plants, taking it back more than a decade in time. While some Mauritanians, especially those who can afford it, used power generators to light their homes, many have escaped to the open desert. Mahmoudi Mohammed reports from Nouakchott.
This is a familiar scene in Mauritanian cities where power generators are becoming a popular commodity. During the past 3 months, the use of power generators has increased to an unprecedented level.
We have no choice but to buy a power generator. We are suffering from frequent power outages.
The power crisis started when the country was battered by flash floods caused by the heavy rainstorms of autumn. The heavy rains, which caused floods and created swamps across the country, damaged the main power lines, plunging entire cities and streets into darkness. To add insult to injury, the rain damaged the local power plants, which provide electricity to the residents. The workers of this carpentry shop found themselves without work. The shop, which has lost power from the sudden interruption of electricity, was closed. What the residents of Mauritanian cities fear the most is the heat and invasion of mosquitoes, especially during the night amidst the power outage. To Mauritanians, the night without power means war against mosquitoes and against the heat. As soon as the night fell, the residents of Nouakchott left their homes and headed to the Red Hills, where they will spend the night escaping from the heat, the mosquitoes, and the seasonal insects that are associated with the rain. After drinking tea and talking, these residents who escaped the heat decided to enjoy the outdoors in the desert. Here, they don't complain about mosquito bites or the lack of sleep due to the heat. They found the desert more accommodating than the so-called modern life of the city.
The leader of the Sahwa Council in Al-Hamasiyya near Al-Yosefiyya and Al-Amariya in Baghdad demanded that the government pay the past due salaries of Al-Sahwa Council members. He said that the delayed salary payments have had a negative effect on the lives and performance of Al-Sahwa Council members.
Al-Sahwa Council has played a positive role and contributed to re-establishing security and stability in different areas in Iraq, and they have taken on the responsibility of fighting and eliminating terrorist and sectarian forces. Despite all this, they have not been rewarded for their accomplishments. Instead, Al-Sahwa Council members, or the Sons of Iraq, are suffering because the government has stopped paying their salaries. The leader of Al-Sahwa Council in Al-Hamasiyya and Al-Amariya in Baghdad called on the government to pay past due salaries and stop the delay because it is negatively affecting the lives and performance of Al-Sahwa Council members. Salah al-Dulaimi, the leader of Al-Sahwa Council in Hamasiyya and near Al-Yosefiyya in southern Baghdad, said that Al-Sahwa Council members have not been paid for 2 months. He said that they have been waiting very patiently for their salaries, which are their only source of income. The leader of Al-Sahwa Council in Al-Amariya, Muhammad al-Azawi, said that most of his men depend on their government salaries, explaining that delayed payment of salaries negatively impacts their morale. He added that members of the Sahwa Council must be paid their salaries just like the army and interior security forces. Another Sahwa leader in Al-Athamiyya warned that Al-Sahwa Council members will leave their posts if they do not receive their past due salaries by next week. He said that Al-Athamiyya Sahwa Council members have not received their salaries for 3 months, but despite this they have continued to perform their duties on time. He said that the Sahwa officials in Athamiyya have issued a warning stating that Al-Sahwa members must be paid by next Sunday or they will leave their posts. He added that the total number of Al-Sahwa Council members in Al-Athamiyya is 1,300. The Sahwa Council members in Hawija held a peaceful demonstration to protest the 3-month delay of salaries. Hassan Mahmoud al-Sufi said that 8,525 fighters have stayed in southwestern Kirkuk. They have not received their salaries for 3 months, despite talking to officials in Al-Hawija and Kirkuk and pleading with the central government in Baghdad. Ordinary Iraqis fear that if these fighters stop working for Al-Sahwa councils, security in the region will deteriorate. They have not been paid, which is harming the lives of those families forced to live on borrowed money. It is worth mentioning that Al-Sahwa Council members are not allowed to take on other jobs aside from their work.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.